Well, what's up guys? This is Daniel from Arms Family Homestead, and in today's video I want to cover a few things that you need to do to prepare your goats for kidding season. So we're in mid-January here in Oklahoma right now, which means kidding season for us is about 2 to 3 weeks away, I hope. Should be. A lot of my does are really starting to show, and based off of when I turn my buck out, we should start kidding, if I remember correctly, I'll have to go back and look, the first or second week of February. So I want to go over a few tips to help you prepare your goat herd for kidding season. Now I'm not an expert and I'm not a vet, but I'm just going off of years of knowledge and experience here on my farm. Now you guys know I raise mostly Kikos and Kiko Cross, and my goal is to raise my own does that produce good, strong, healthy kids on their own with minimal help. I don't want to be out here all the time basically being a midwife for my goats. I have no plans on being a goat midwife out here. So my goal is for the goats to do most of it on their own, but there's still some things I do to help prepare my goats for a good, healthy, prosperous kidding season. And I'm not just talking about a day or two in advance. We're going to start off with about 4 to 6 weeks out. The first thing you're going to want to do is worm all of your does, just because you want a good healthy doe when it comes kidding season. So I raise Kikos, they're very parasite resistant, but I still go ahead and worm my goats just to flush out any parasites 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time. And then I also give, and I've covered this in a video before, the one and only vaccine that I give my goats is CDT, which is Clostridium perfringens type C and D and tetanus. I give them that annual booster, but I do that about 3 or 4 weeks before kidding. That way the kid is born with that in their system and it kind of gets them a little boost, and then 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks after birth, I'll give my kids a second round of that CDT. So I do that weeks in advance to prepare my goats for a healthy kidding season. Now, you guys know I don't really feed a lot of grain to my goats. I threw out a few pellets out here just to get them up because they were off grazing. I wanted them in the background for the video. But coming into kidding season, I'll start feeding them some grain because I want a good, strong, healthy doe that's got, you know, a really good body condition. They need that extra fat on them because after they give birth, they're going to be producing a lot of milk to feed those kids. So about a month ahead of time before kidding season, I'll start feeding them grain. A lot of people want to know what I feed. Most of the time during the winter months, my goats get grass hay off of a round bale and a molasses protein tub, which is a tub that I buy from my local feed store. It's like 18% protein, but it has a ton of minerals and things in it to kind of help them out. It's a very thick molasses based product that it's almost like a mineral lick or a mineral block, but with that molasses in it. The goats really like it. I keep those out all winter long, and the grass hay. Plus they go out and graze when I turn them out. There's not a lot of grass, but they go out and graze some. Then, as I said, as we get close to kidding season, through kidding season while my does are in milk, I feed them, I would say probably 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds a day on average per goat, maybe a little bit more sometimes. A lot of times what I feed is a creep feed, just like for cattle. I buy 14% creep feed because I can buy it in bulk at my local feed store, so it saves me from buying it by the bag. Buying it in bulk is a lot cheaper. Some years I've gone and bought what they call a 4-way blend, which is basically a blend that it's local here. You guys may have something like that in your area, but it's corn gluten pellets, corn chops, soybean pellets. It's just a mixture. The goats really seem to like it. It's a little cheaper than creep feed, and it works out well for them. And like I said, they're always getting minerals from that molasses tub, and a lot of times I'll keep a dry powdered mineral out for them, especially during kidding season and thereafter, because those kids are sucking so much out of them. So now let's get into things you want to do you know, days ahead, just a few days before kidding season and during kidding season. There's some things you want to have on hand and some things you want to do. So if you're like me and you kid out during the cooler season, during the cool months, I prefer to kid out during the cooler months because I have a lot less problems with parasites and my kids just do much better. And as I said, my Kikos, I want those does to do as much of the work on their own as they can. Most of the kids are born out in the field. I have very few does that actually have their babies in the barn, but I always want to be prepared in case a really bad storm comes through and some of those does decide to kid out when it's nice and cold or we got snow or rain. So I'm going to prepare my barn area. I've got several bales of just straw that's not actually hay. I'll make a real thick bed up in there. And I've got several different pens that I can separate goats out into. My little corral system over here. There is a, scoot over here. There's a pen with a separate barn there, and then this little shed here, I can put a panel up and block that off. That way if I have a doe that's having some problems or has triplets and she's not wanting to take them maybe, or a first time doe that's not wanting to stay, I can pin them up together for a few days, separate them from the rest of the does, and they don't get harassed. But the main thing there is I'm gonna keep good, fresh, dry bedding down for them. So when those kids, after they're born, these Kikos do a really good job of being born in the cold, jumping up and running off like a deer, but I want them to have a place that they can go to stay dry. The main thing with goats is you want to keep them dry. They don't like to be wet. They stay much more healthy when they're dry. So good bedding up there. And I also make sure I have a good heat lamp down here. So when we have, you know, all these babies born within a couple weeks, those babies like to huddle up together and sleep. And I've got a little place up there in the barn that I section off in the corner that I can put a heat lamp in and only those baby goats can get to. And they don't necessarily need it, but if it's gonna get down, you know, single digits in the teens, I wanna keep a heat lamp out at night just to help those babies out. So when kidding season gets here, I always keep a supply of like fresh towels, some iodine if I need to clean a wound or something. I keep a bottle of Nutri-Drench. I don't know if I've showed you guys that before on the channel. The Nutri-Drench is something you can give kids. It's just a really thick, nutrient-dense medicine that you can give those kids a few cc's of, and it gives them a really big boost of energy. Kind of like Pedialyte for goats, maybe. I always keep a bucket and a fish scale because I like to know what my kids weigh at birth. So as soon as I can get out here after they're born, I'll throw them in a 5-gallon bucket, hold them up in that fish scale, and then I've got my notebook that I keep all my notes in. Right here at the barn, I keep that down here during kidding season so I can write down the day that the kids were born. I can write down, you know, the ear tag number. Come here, mama. All of my goats are ear tagged. Well, she's not gonna cooperate. All of my goats are ear tagged. So I can write down the ear tag number of the doe, and then I know which buck, because I only got one buck here, but I can keep records. Then I've got my ear tags right there close. So as soon as I weigh that kid, I'm gonna put an ear tag in its ear, write it down so I know which doe it came from, and then I'll always have a record of which does are producing well, which ones are throwing twins, triplets, singles. And then it gives me a way to know which does need to be culled year after year. If I've got a doe that just throws a single baby every year, she's probably gonna get culled. So another thing that most people try to keep on hand is a good colostrum replacer. Either find a good reputable brand that's a powder that you can mix up of colostrum, or if you know somebody that has dairy goats, or after you have your first couple kids, you can milk out a little bit of colostrum, put it in a plastic bottle and save it. Just find some way to have a little bit of colostrum on hand. That way, in the event of you have a doe that doesn't want to take their kids, or she's having problems nursing, then you can get that kid, that newborn kid, some colostrum, because without that, they're basically not going to survive. Some other things people like to keep on hand, the tools for pulling, if you got to pull a baby. So, you know, something to wrap around the legs, some nice rubber gloves, some lubricant. I've never had to pull a baby, but I know a lot of people that have. I actually did have to take one goat to the vet one time, and the vet had to pull the babies because they were dead, and it was a weird process. I didn't know what was going on, so I went ahead and took her to the vet. But you may want to keep some stuff on hand for pulling a baby if you need to assist the baby or assist the mama to get the babies out. And one thing a lot of people don't think about is their livestock guardian dog. If you've got a young dog that's say a year, maybe 2 years old, that's never been through a kidding season, you may want a place to lock your livestock guardian dog up. I've never really had a problem with it, but I've talked to people and heard people in the past who had issues with their livestock guard dog kind of harassing the does while they were kidding. As they get a little older, you rarely have any problems because they know what's going on. They know the process, and they'll actually go out and lay down with your mama does and help clean up the afterbirth. I've had livestock guard dogs in the past that actually get out there with the doe, and when the kid's born, the dog and the goat are both over there licking the baby clean. But you just want to have a place where you can lock your livestock guard dog up if you need to, if they're kind of harassing a doe or something. It's always a good idea to have that option if you need it. Well guys, that's all I've got for today. Just a few quick tips on how I prepare my goats for kidding season, things I do around here to be prepared ahead of time. I hope that answers some questions. I know I missed some things, you know, things like tubing and all that. I've never learned how to tube feed kid goats myself, so I don't keep that on hand. Maybe I need to learn that one of these days. But anyways, guys, if there's anything I left out, something you can think of, don't hesitate to leave it in the comment section down below, because as I said, I'm not an expert. I'm not a vet. I'm just a guy that's had goats for, I don't know, 10 years now, and just kind of some of the tips and tricks I do to prepare my goats for kidding season. So that's all we got for today. Ain't that right, Bear? You're such a good boy, aren't you? You like hanging out with me out here, huh? Well guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Y'all have a great day, and as always, we'll see you on the next video.